and then all the Samoan, Tonga, and all the other islands in between. So again, I was, at the beginning, very hesitant.
Temuera Morrison, you probably know him as the face and voice behind some of Star Wars' most iconic characters. From bringing Jango Fett and his clones to life to lending his voice as Boba Fett, Morrison truly nailed those roles. But that Star Wars spotlight? It's been a while since it shone that bright on him. More recently, you might have heard his voice as Chief Tui in Moana, a role that surely came with a nice paycheck. But here's the thing. Temuera Morrison's life today isn't quite what most of us might picture. He just turned 64, but his day-to-day life is far from the glamorous Hollywood life you'd expect. So, what's really going on with him now? How does Temuera Morrison live? And what's he up to these days? Stick around because we are diving into all the details. From Auckland to the galaxy, the rise of Temuera Morrison. When you star in something as massive as Star Wars, most people assume you're set for life. And yes, Temuera Morrison, the New Zealand actor who became a fan favorite in the galaxy far, far away, earned plenty from his roles. But life doesn't always stick to the script. Sometimes it hits you with challenges that no one sees coming. That's what happened to Morrison, and even today he's still trying to fully find his balance again. So what exactly happened to the man many fans see as a Star Wars legend? Keep watching to find out. Temuera Morrison was born in 1960 in Rotorua, a scenic town on New Zealand's North Island. His family was deeply connected to the Maori culture, the indigenous people of New Zealand, and he also had Scottish and Irish roots. His father, Laurie Morrison, was a musician, and his mother, Hannah Morrison, came from the Stafford family. The arts ran in the family. His sister Tainey was a performer, and his uncle, Sir Howard Morrison, was one of New Zealand's most famous entertainers. Morrison went to school first at Wesley College in Auckland, then Western Heights High School back in Rotorua. Temuera's first taste of acting came early. In 1973, he appeared in a New Zealand children's adventure film called Rangi's Catch, playing the lead. He trained in drama under a special New Zealand program designed to prepare actors for the stage and screen. By 1988, he was starring in movies like Never Say Die alongside American actress Lisa Eilbacher. Not long after, he joined the cast of Shortland Street, a long-running New Zealand hospital drama, playing Dr. Hone Ropata from 1992 to 1995. His real breakout role came in 1994 with Once Were Warriors. In it, he played Jake the Mus Heki, a violent, abusive Maori husband. The movie was based on a novel and became New Zealand's biggest local hit at the time, earning global attention. The role brought Morrison critical praise, winning him awards, but it also came with a downside. He later admitted that being known for such a brutal character made it hard for him to get different kinds of roles. He felt it was like a weight he couldn't shake. In the years that followed, Morrison appeared in a mix of Hollywood films and New Zealand projects, from the action sequel Speed 2: Cruise Control to the cult comic book movie Barbed Wire. He also became a TV host in 2005, running his own talk show called The Tem Show. That same year, he was officially recognized by the New Zealand government and awarded the title of Member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for his services to drama. By 2014, he had even tried his hand at music, releasing an album called Tem, filled with covers of songs his father and uncle used to perform when he was growing up. But it was Star Wars that gave him his worldwide fame. In 2002, Morrison was cast as Jango Fett, a skilled space bounty hunter, basically a hired gun who hunts people across the galaxy. The movie's storyline revealed that an entire army of identical soldiers was cloned from Jango's DNA. So Morrison also became the voice for all those clones in the films. He later re-recorded lines for Boba Fett, a fan-favorite character who was essentially a younger version of Jango, made from the same genetic material, in updated versions of the original Star Wars movies. Over the years, Morrison kept returning to the Star Wars universe, not just in movies but also in video games, animated shows, and more. In 2020, he physically played Boba Fett for the first time in the hit Disney Plus series The Mandalorian. This was an older, battle-worn version of the character, complete with facial scars and a deeper, raspier voice to show how much he had been through. Morrison also infused the role with elements of his Maori heritage, particularly in the way the character moved and fought, which gave Boba Fett a unique cultural edge. The role's popularity led to his own spin-off series, The Book of Boba Fett, which premiered in December 2021 and followed the character's life after the events of the original trilogy. Morrison even made a surprise cameo in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as a down-on-his-luck homeless former soldier, a rare moment that humanized the clone army he had voiced for years. Outside of Star Wars, Morrison kept busy. He returned briefly to Shortland Street in 2008, popped up in comedy sketches poking fun at his clone legacy, and took roles in big comic book movies. In 2011, he played an alien called Abin Sur in Green Lantern. Later, he joined the DC superhero universe as Tom Curry, the human father of Aquaman, appearing in both Aquaman movies as well as The Flash. And if you have seen Disney's Moana, you have heard him as the voice of Chief Tui, the warm but overprotective father of the main character. He returned for Moana 2 in 2024, this time also doing the singing himself. Temuera Morrison's career has been long, varied, and full of memorable characters, from brutal New Zealand dramas to blockbuster space adventures. But while Star Wars cemented him as a pop culture icon, life after the galaxy far, far away has had its own challenges. But before we get into the challenges that the star is currently facing, how did he land the role of Boba Fett? The real reason. Temuera Morrison was cast as Jango Boba Fett. Temuera Morrison is now a Star Wars staple, the man behind the helmet of Jango Fett and later the battle-worn face of Boba Fett. But when Attack of the Clones was being made in the early 2000s, Morrison wasn't a household name. Outside of New Zealand, most people had never heard of him. He'd done a handful of smaller films and TV work, but nothing that screamed international blockbuster star. So why did George Lucas, the man who could cast almost anyone at that point, choose Morrison to be both the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy and the face of an entire clone army? It all goes back to a completely different film, Once Were Warriors, a hard-hitting New Zealand drama from 1994. In it, Morrison played Jake the Muss Heck, a violent, neglectful husband and father whose anger often exploded into brutal, bare-knuckle fights. The performance was intense, unsettling, and unforgettable. Morrison brought so much raw force to the role, especially in the fight scenes, that the film became an instant classic in New Zealand and gained critical attention overseas. Lucas was one of the people who saw it, and when he was casting Attack of the Clones, that performance stuck with him. He saw in Morrison a presence that could be both dangerous and magnetic, someone who could embody Jango Fett, a mysterious, no-nonsense bounty hunter, and also convincingly stand as the genetic blueprint for an entire army of identical soldiers. It also didn't hurt that Morrison had a face you remembered. Strong, distinctive features that made the idea of an army of one man instantly believable. If you were going to clone somebody thousands of times, this was the right guy to make it work. Casting relatively unknown actors in major roles was nothing new for Star Wars. Back in 1977, when Lucas made A New Hope, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher were newcomers. Harrison Ford was still years away from becoming a Hollywood icon. The only major veterans in the cast were Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing. And even then, Guinness was brought in partly to give the film some credibility in case it flopped. Lucas himself admitted money was tight, so big-name salaries weren't an option. That approach carried on in later films. Natalie Portman had some roles before playing Queen Amidala, but wasn't yet a superstar. Daisy Ridley was a complete unknown before becoming Rey. Even Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, who joined in Episode 1, weren't the global names they are today. Neeson had Schindler's List but wasn't yet a constant headliner, and McGregor was best known for Trainspotting. By the time the prequels rolled around, Lucas didn't have to worry about the budget anymore. Star Wars was a guaranteed moneymaker, but he clearly liked working with fresh faces. It kept the characters from being overshadowed by the actors' past roles, and it gave the audience a blank slate. For Morrison, that philosophy worked in his favor. He wasn't brought in because he was a celebrity. He was brought in because he had the right presence and the right look, and because one unforgettable performance convinced George Lucas he could be both the deadliest man in the galaxy and the face of its most famous army. One man, one face, 1,000 soldiers, and the start of a Star Wars legacy. That legacy didn't just rest in Morrison's performance, it thrived because of the man he was stepping into. The real reason fans love Boba Fett. When Temuera Morrison stepped onto the set of The Mandalorian in Boba Fett's battered green armor, it wasn't just another day at work. For him, it was a full-circle moment. He caught the look in Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's eyes and knew immediately this was exactly where he was meant to be. It wasn't just an actor returning to a role, it was a character returning to his rightful place in the galaxy. Boba Fett has always stood apart in the Star Wars universe. He isn't the charming rogue like Han Solo, the idealistic hero like Luke Skywalker, or the power-hungry Sith like Palpatine. He's the quiet professional, the man who speaks little, works fast, and always gets the job done. That air of calm danger has kept fans hooked for more than 40 years. Back in the original trilogy, Fett barely spoke at all, yet his presence was impossible to ignore. When he first appeared in The Empire Strikes Back, tracking the Millennium Falcon for Darth Vader and delivering Han Solo frozen in carbonite to Jabba the Hutt, he immediately gave the impression of a man you didn't want to cross. By Return of the Jedi, he was swallowed by the Sarlacc in what seemed like an almost comical end, but that didn't matter. Despite maybe a dozen lines across both films, Boba Fett became one of the saga's most popular figures. His appeal was in the mystery, the sense that there was a whole dangerous life behind that dented helmet and jetpack. Part of what cemented that fascination was the look. His armor wasn't pristine like an Imperial officer's, it was battered and scarred, the paint chipped, the visor a dark T-shaped slit that revealed nothing. The gadgets built into his suit, a flamethrower on his wrist and a rocket on his back, told you everything you needed to know without a single word. Even kids who had never seen the originals could spot him on a lunchbox and know instantly, this guy is trouble. When Morrison returned in The Mandalorian, Boba Fett had changed. Time in the Sarlacc had left scars on his face and a weight in his voice. Morrison has said he made the voice rougher and deeper on purpose, a reflection of everything the man had endured. And the fans saw it too. This wasn't just the efficient hunter anymore. There was a code of honor now, a willingness to stand by his word. In The Tragedy, when he finally reclaims his armor, he doesn't disappear. He stays to help Din Djarin rescue Grogu from Imperial forces because he promised. For a character once defined by cold detachment, that kind of loyalty hit differently. Part of the magic came from Morrison himself. Favreau and Filoni saw Boba as a Western gunslinger in space, and Morrison understood that instinctively. Growing up in New Zealand, he often stayed up late with his father to watch old cowboy films, soaking in the slow, deliberate body language and quiet menace of Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef. In The Mandalorian, he brought that same energy, the lone wanderer with a score to settle, moving through a fight like he owned the place. And then there was the warrior spirit. Morrison infused Boba with elements of his Maori heritage, channeling the Haka's intensity into fight scenes. In The Tragedy, when Boba tears through stormtroopers with a Gaddafi stick, it's not polished stunt choreography. It's raw, brutal stick fighting drawn straight from Maori tradition. Armor shatters, helmets crack, and it feels real in a way that makes you believe this man could take on an army without the Force. Even with the extra backstory in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, the confirmation that his father was a Mandalorian foundling, that the armor truly belongs to him, and that surviving the Sarlacc changed his outlook, he's still not a man who explains himself. He says little, reveals even less, and that's exactly the point. The intrigue remains intact. Fans have held on to him for decades because he represents something rare in Star Wars. He's competent without needing to boast, mysterious without being shallow, and honorable without being soft. He's a survivor who literally fought his way out of a monster's stomach and came back stronger. And now, with Morrison giving him not just menace but also grit, swagger, and a quiet humanity, Boba Fett feels fuller than he's ever been. He's not about chosen one destinies or dramatic speeches. He's about surviving the fight, finishing the job, and looking damn good while doing it. So when Morrison slipped the armor back on, it wasn't just fan service, it was restoration. And for the fans, it confirmed what they'd known all along. Boba Fett never really left. But beyond the armor in the galaxy, far, far away, Morrison's real-life story has its own battles, victories, and quiet heartbreaks. Temuera Morrison's love life. Long before Hollywood red carpets and billion-dollar box office hits, There was a young Temuera in the late 1980s when he was still an up-and-coming star. He began dating singer Kim Willoughby from the New Zealand group When the Cat's Away. They were young, in love, and building their dreams side by side. Their relationship brought them a son, James, but over time they drifted apart and went their separate ways. The reasons were kept private, but their shared history remained through their child. By the late 1990s, Temuera's heart found a new match in actress Angela Dotchin, a familiar face to many as Christy Knight from Shortland Street. Their relationship, which began in 1997, felt steady and full of promise. They spent several happy years together, but in 2002, life pulled them in different directions. Angela left for England to start fresh in the fashion industry, and the romance quietly came to an end. Not long after, Temuera was linked to Maori television presenter Peata Melbourne. Together, they welcomed a daughter, Aorangi. While the relationship eventually ended, they both remained devoted parents. These days, Temuera is happily settled with his partner of several years, Ashley Howden Sadlier. Their relationship stands out not because Ashley is 26 years younger, but because the connection between them is clearly built on deep respect and joy. Ashley is a multi-talented woman, a model, dancer, entertainer, and TV presenter, and she has been a steady presence in Temuera's life, supporting him as he continues to take on new roles and adventures. The couple keeps their private life away from the spotlight, but their bond is evident. Temuera's children have also chosen quieter paths. James, his son with Kim Willoughby, was reported to be studying business at Auckland University in 2012 and later living in London. His daughter, Aorangi, with Peata Melbourne, is believed to be a student at Western Springs College. Both prefer to keep their lives away from the public eye, even as their father remains a household name. Temuera Morrison's controversies. Temuera Morrison has been in the Star Wars galaxy for over 2 decades, and for the most part, he's avoided the usual pitfalls that come with being the face of a franchise. He's never been a magnet for scandals, and his name doesn't pop up in Hollywood gossip rags for the wrong reasons. But somehow the characters he plays, especially Boba Fett, keep finding themselves in the middle of fan firestorms. Whether it's the look of the clones, the questionable direction of Disney's Star Wars projects, or his surprising absence from shows he was supposed to be in, Morrison's career has been tangled up in more controversy than you might expect from a man who's just doing his job. One of the most surprising controversies didn't come from Morrison himself, but from how his likeness was used. In Star Wars: The Bad Batch, the titular clone squad are supposed to be genetically identical to Jango Fett, meaning in-universe they're all clones of a Maori man. But when the show premiered, fans noticed something off. The Bad Batch members looked noticeably paler than the regular clones, with more Eurocentric facial features. That's all it took for the hashtag #unwhitewashthebadbatch to explode across social media. Fans accused Lucasfilm of whitewashing Morrison's likeness, and the optics didn't help. The good guy clones, our heroes, were lighter-skinned, while the antagonistic clones looked closer to Morrison's natural tone. To many, that leaned into an old, ugly trope: white-coated heroes versus darker-coated villains. Not a great look for a franchise built on the idea of fighting an oppressive empire. The pushback was loud enough that Bad Batch director Brad Rao addressed it directly in an interview with Collider, saying the team had listened to concerns and gone back to color-correct earlier episodes. By Season 2, the clones looked darker and closer to Morrison's skin tone, but that didn't erase the awkwardness of the first season. Then there's the Book of Boba Fett, a show that should have been a victory lap for Morrison. This was his chance to fully embody the character he'd been voicing and playing in bits and pieces for years. Instead, it turned into one of Disney's most divisive Star Wars projects. The problem wasn't Morrison's performance. He gave Boba Fett a quiet gravitas that could have anchored the series. The issue was the show itself. Halfway through, it seemed to forget it was about Boba Fett. The Mandalorian Pedro Pascal swooped in, stole 2 whole episodes, and even undid one of the most dramatic moments from his own show, The Mandalorian Season 2's finale, in an unrelated spin-off. Fans who skipped Boba Fett and went straight to Mandalorian Season 3 were left confused, wondering how a major plot twist had been reversed off-screen. It didn't help that the show's pacing was sluggish, its villains underwhelming, and its reliance on nostalgia smothered any fresh ideas. If you strip away the callbacks, the Book of Boba Fett didn't seem to know what it wanted to be. The real sting for Morrison came later. In an interview at Fan Expo Chicago, he revealed he hadn't been asked to return for the upcoming The Mandalorian and Grogu movie. He said he was still waiting for a phone call, adding that he thought they were just put on the shelf for a little bit, and maybe they would come off the shelf later. It wasn't just the movie. Morrison was also supposed to appear in The Mandalorian Season 3, but never got the call. Speaking at Supernova Comic-Con in Melbourne, he admitted he was waiting and wanting to give up, frustrated at being sidelined in a universe he's been part of for over 20 years. Fans were quick to rally around him. Social media lit up with support, with one user writing that Temuera Morrison had been their favorite since the prequels and deserved far better. Another added that they really did him dirty. The consensus was clear. The man behind the helmet deserved more respect from Lucasfilm. Morrison himself didn't shy away from pointing out the elephant in the room, namely that the Book of Boba Fett didn't entirely feel like his show. "Well, that Mando guy stole a few chapters of my book," he joked, referring to Pedro Pascal's character. He followed it with a jab. "I'm sure this guy is, ruining my show. But I couldn't say anything. I'm not the writer, so I have to bear it, I guess." It was a playful dig, but there was truth underneath. Even if Morrison never openly blasted Lucasfilm, the implication was obvious. The creative decisions, not his acting, were what dragged the Book of Boba Fett down. What's striking is how much Morrison's controversies mirror a larger Star Wars trend under Disney. Beloved characters brought back without a clear plan, resulting in uneven storytelling and fan frustration. It happened with Boba Fett. It happened with Obi-Wan. And it nearly happened with The Mandalorian before that show doubled down on original characters and storylines. Morrison, unfortunately, ended up as the public face of some of these missteps. But if you look closely, his actual performances are rarely the issue. Whether he's Jango, Boba, or voicing a legion of clones, he brings a grounded presence to roles that could easily be cartoonish. The controversy isn't about him, it's about what happens around him. Temuera Morrison's life after Star Wars. Temuera Morrison might be forever etched in pop culture as the man under Boba Fett's helmet, but life after Star Wars hasn't been a straight line of galactic glory. Yes, he's kept working steadily in Hollywood, but his post-Star Wars chapter has been a mix of blockbuster returns, small hometown projects, close calls with scheduling disasters, and the occasional awkward pause in his career. If anything, Morrison's life since donning the Mandalorian armor proves that even for fan-favorite actors, the business can be unpredictable. After decades of playing everything from warriors to kings, Morrison has built a career that dances between the global stage and his New Zealand roots. He's done billion-dollar box office hits like Aquaman and Moana 2, but also smaller, passion-driven local films that wouldn't exist without a lot of favors and late-night phone calls. And when a recent project, In the Fire of War, or Kawahai Tonu, landed in his lap, it wasn't just another acting gig, it was personal. The film tells the story of the siege of Orakau in 1864 during the New Zealand Wars, blending historical figures with fictional characters to capture both the chaos of battle and the quieter human struggles around it. Morrison took on the role of legendary Chief Rui Maniapoto, a man he can actually trace his own ancestry to. Director Michael Jonathan shares similar genealogy, making the collaboration even more layered. Morrison admitted that playing a figure from his own bloodline came with a sense of obligation. It wasn't a role he signed on to easily, though. When production finally rolled around, Morrison was already in the middle of another period drama, Chief of War, with Jason Momoa. He told friends he wasn't sure he could make it work, but after pulling a few strings and maybe stretching the truth on his availability, he carved out a 10-day gap in his schedule. Those 10 days back in Rotorua became some of the most rewarding of his recent career. The set was filled with descendants of the real warriors they were portraying, many of whom had no formal acting training but brought genuine emotion to their roles. Morrison later described how even the crew felt a deep pride in representing their ancestors. It was a production powered less by Hollywood machinery and more by shared heritage and passion. For Morrison, It was a reminder that not every meaningful role comes with a billion-dollar budget. Sometimes it's the projects made at home that carry the most heart. That lesson isn't new for him. Back in 1994, Morrison's breakout performance in Once Were Warriors was in another small-budget film that hit far harder than anyone expected. At the time, he was fresh from a role as a doctor in the soap opera Shortland Street, and not everyone thought he could handle the brutal intensity of Jake the Muss Hickey. He admitted he feared the movie's themes. Domestic violence, alcoholism, and raw depictions of family abuse would turn audiences away. Instead, it became a landmark in New Zealand cinema and still gets mentioned to him by fans around the world, sometimes even more than his Star Wars work. But Star Wars is still the shadow that looms largest over Morrison's career. He first appeared in the galaxy far, far away in 2002's Attack of the Clones as Jango Fett, a role that unexpectedly spiraled into decades of work across films, TV, and video games. 2 decades later, Disney came calling again, asking him to return as Boba Fett in The Mandalorian and his own spin-off series, The Book of Boba Fett. Morrison admits he never imagined it would turn into such a long-running gig. His approach to roles has always been simple. Work hard for the director who cast you, focus on the job at hand, and don't overthink where it might lead. Still, there's been turbulence in his post-Star Wars run. Morrison hasn't been shy about suggesting that the Book of Boba Fett didn't exactly go the way he would have liked. Rumors swirled about behind-the-scenes creative clashes, and while Morrison hasn't aired all the details, his subtle comments in interviews hinted at frustrations with the direction the character took. Since then, his Star Wars profile has gone quieter. Not gone entirely, but certainly cooled compared to the peak of the series' hype. Rather than wait for Lucasfilm to call again, Morrison has shifted his focus back to projects that keep him connected to his heritage and his home industry. He's candid about how the Hollywood dream has changed. Years ago, everyone wanted to make it in Los Angeles. Now he sees more opportunities for filmmakers to stay in New Zealand or Australia and make their own mark without leaving. That shift suits him. After years of long flights, hotel rooms, and packed convention schedules, being able to work close to home holds a different kind of appeal. The irony is that the same man who's been immortalized as a Star Wars icon still chases the feeling of smaller, riskier projects. He knows those are the films that can surprise you, the ones where you don't have a marketing machine guaranteeing a hit. For him, In the Fire of War was proof that even in a career stacked with blockbuster roles, it's the deeply personal projects that can feel most satisfying and maybe even most important. That doesn't mean Morrison's days of big-budget work are behind him. He's still voicing Chief Tui in Disney's Moana franchise and popping up in superhero epics, proving he can bounce between worlds just fine. But if you look closely at his career choices after Star Wars, you'll notice a pattern. The further he gets from Boba Fett's armor, the more he leans into stories rooted in his culture, told with people he trusts. Of course, not every chapter in his post-Star Wars life has been smooth. There have been roles that didn't quite land, schedules that almost fell apart, and public appearances where fans have pressed him about creative decisions he wasn't in control of. But controversy hasn't derailed him. If anything, it's given him a sharper sense of what matters to him as an actor. These days, Morrison isn't just chasing screen time. He's chasing meaning. Whether it's working alongside longtime friends, honoring his ancestors, or finding ways to tell Maori stories on a global scale, he's building a legacy that stretches beyond the galaxy far, far away. Star Wars may have made him a household name, but it's everything he's done since. The risks, the returns, and yes, the occasional ruffled feathers, that's shaping who Temuera Morrison is now. Did you like Morrison's portrayal of Boba Fett? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.